there's a policy framework. So why should organizations include people with disability? There's a policy framework, so it's just in obedience to the law. We are signatories as a country to the UN Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability. We have our constitution. When you look at the Bill of Rights, chapter 4, I believe, it talks about inclusion in the economic, in the social, in the political, in the cultural space. We have the Disability Act of 2003, which is under review. It also mentions, encourages or expects organizations to be inclusive. But so what can organizations specifically do? It begins right from the recruitment. From the recruitment. Are you inclusive when you are recruiting? Do you have interpreters? Is the environment conducive for somebody on a wheelchair like me to come for the interview? Do you have an inclusive policy? Is the working environment welcoming once I am engaged? So it is important that organizations invest in minimum adjustments, and this has to do with the physical environment. It has to do with places like washrooms, which we ignore sometimes, working spaces, working from home options, the language we use, and this is something we take very lightly. What kind of language is used in your office? Do we use languages like disabled, crippled, handicapped? Is that what you define us to be? What is your corporate culture like? Does it stigmatize? Do you portray pity, charity, neediness? Or are you inclusive and make the environment comfortable for those that will be different? How about having capacity building programs like staff training? Is that part of what you have? Are you able to engage persons with disability? Just like you started by asking, if a customer walked in, it's the same with the employee, that had a physical disability or a visual disability, what would you do? I'll give you a story. I worked in the bank before I got into the advocacy world. And one of the reasons I silently left the bank and was not ready or was not able to discuss was the washrooms. Every time I needed, so I have both worlds of experience. I got a disability when I was working. Every time I needed to use the washroom, I would have to go home. And luckily home was near. What if home was not near? So those are just the basic things you look at and we take for granted. So those are some of the things we can do so that we make the environment conducive, we make the environment healthy, we make the environment ability friendly, and therefore embrace persons with disability. Thank you.
You know, Bright, you have talked about the washroom. In customer experience excellence, we are always saying how the washroom is a customer touch point. The same way the reception or the entrance to your premise, to your business, to your brand is such a big touch point. We keep on talking about the washroom as a customer touch point that is a deal breaker for the internal and the external customer, because a customer can come to your washroom and make a decision about that restaurant, about that business, about that organization, about that office, and make a decision there. And so in as much as we are looking at the cleanliness of the washroom maybe, or whether the washroom has a mirror, if it is in the ladies' washroom, because if a washroom without a mirror, a ladies' washroom without a mirror is not a washroom. We need to ask ourselves right now, based on the story you have told and how it is a deal breaker for you, are our washrooms inclusive? Are they? So to the group on this call today, that's an area for us to go and ask ourselves, are our washrooms inclusive for the internal and external customer? And talking about internal customers, Winnie, please tell us. There's a bit of work that has been done, both in public and private sector, for inclusion of persons with disabilities in the workforce. And there's many organizations that are trying to say we shall reserve this quota of the number of jobs, say, for example, to include this team. What can we do as organizations to ensure that we are more inclusive in terms of employment, because finding jobs is hard. Whether you have special needs or not, it is very difficult. And so therefore, those with special needs find it even that much more difficult, because those who have their full functionality are struggling. What could we do to be more inclusive, Winnie? Talk to us.
Thank you once again for that question. I think there's a bit that you asked previously about what jobs can persons with disability do. Just a bit on that, I believe that these people can do a variety of jobs that depending on their passions, because they also have passions just like all of us. Sometimes they are unable to pursue their passions because probably the education system in Kenya, you want to go to this college, but all factors are hindering you, like they can't pursue. But eventually, we have engineers, we have counselors, we have teachers, we have lots of different program managers and coordinators that they can do. So I believe the first and very important thing, because as you mentioned, finding job for somebody like me without a disability is already a challenge here. So somebody with disability, the challenge becomes like triple. So if we want to be intentional about giving opportunity to people with disability, I think the first thing is for us as the organizations to create a positive attitude. Because when we look at it, among the so many barriers that we will find are a hindrance, financial, physical barriers, and all those, attitude plays a very key role when it comes to this, when the staff in this place already have the adequate training, so that when Bright gets to your office, you don't look at the wheelchair first and want to know what's the story behind, but you see the person first. Because from her short speech, I believe already you can tell that there's so much value that she's bringing on the table, other than her way of moving or stuff like that. So I feel that changing of our attitude is one very key area that all of us can engage in. And this is very easy. We can start by having the staff trained on basic things, disability etiquette. The first time you meet a person, how do you approach them? How far or how close can we relate with these people, and what will make them comfortable or uncomfortable? I remember when Carol was inviting me for this meeting, I really insisted that as much as I'm a real inclusion champion, there are things I don't want to talk about. Well, I feel a person with disability is better placed to speak about them. As much as I might have that knowledge, but I still feel it just makes more sense to give them a chance. There are things that you can do, but they can as well do. Why not give them that same opportunity? They are good receptionists. They can as well work. And sometimes you go to, I think, Bright Nose National Council, you find very beautiful ladies at the reception. And unless you maybe they stand or walk, you might sometimes not even realize, and they're able to deliver very well when given such jobs. So they're just a variety. One thing we can do other than training people on being disability accommodative in our attitudes, something else we can be intentional about recruitment, because once we have them on board, some of the trainings we can even done internally. Once you have a deaf person in your organization, once you have somebody with physical disability, or like that, then it will be easy, because you'll be realizing, oh, even our kitchen is not accessible as we thought. Even this walkway, we thought this office space is well arranged. Then it makes it more easy than when you just make it theoretical. And when you are advertising for your jobs, you can maybe put this as part of your advertisement, that we are an equal employer who will provide reasonable accommodation for people with disabilities. So you are intentional about bringing them on board. Once they come on board, the things that Bright mentioned, just creating spaces, the basic environment around the office. And even as you're doing that, something else that you can do is to make like your information. If you have brochures, if you have your website, you can make a website that can be readable, like WordPress, or something that can the blind people can use, like screen reader when they can't read, but they're able to use screen reader to access all your information, something like that. So those are just basic small things that an organization can do to just ensure that your office is friendly. If it's in terms of having light, for some people, they just need sufficient light. that some other people might not really realize. So there are basic trainings that I feel as we have started this journey with ICX, we could organize for something like that: disability etiquette, just inclusion, and I think basically that's it.
Thank you very much, Winnie. Bright, you started speaking about what we call in customer experience excellence, the language for customer service excellence. There's such a thing. We talk about what to say and what not to say, and there are many trainers in this room who even train about these are the do's and don'ts. This is what should come out of your mouth, and this is what shouldn't. Are there some things that we need to be sensitive about to either say or not say? Because you started talking about, are we referring to persons with disabilities that say crippled or unable, or I don't know, what could we say or not say? Some people say that we shouldn't even say disability, we should say differently abled. And then some people say that when you try to make it like that, then it becomes even worse than just naming it as it is. So please share with us a little bit, what kind of language, when you talk about attitude, I think that's where it all starts. Because when somebody talks to you, you can see they're unspoken. But what about the spoken? Could you speak a little bit into that? Over to you, Bright.
Thank you. Language, really, what you call a thing determines what you think about the thing. So language is critical. So there's need to discourage this ableist language that is labeling. And the best way to go about it is not to assume anything. You need to communicate respectively, but you also need to ask the person what their view, what they want to be called. There are people when you say differently able, they're fine. There are people when you call them a person with disability, they are fine. So the essence of communication is respect, is not assumption, is avoiding labels. I remember one time I was hospitalized, and I would hear nurses in corridors talking to each other, and they would say stuff like, have you gone to has the paraplegic room 4 eaten? And paraplegic means I am paralyzed from waist down, and therefore I got a label. And I lost my name all of a sudden, and the label became my identity. So just being respectful, using my name, finding out from me, not assuming, using even the right tone. Sometimes the tone is the problem, is not even what you say, and the kinds of questions that you ask. Like if I walked in, and I believe I walk in on my wheelchair, and you ask me what happened to you as your first question, there are many times I've been asked that question and I actually don't know the answer because I don't know what you're talking about. Having lived with a disability for this long, I no longer find the wheelchair as a tool of inhibition, but instead is a tool of freedom. So I don't even think about it. So when you ask me what happened to you in a low tone like that, you're already using that ableist language that is already profiling, or don't worry, you'll be okay one day, So we need to be able to not assume that we know, but engage the person, let them tell you what they're comfortable with, just the same way that I don't come to you and intrude. I don't ask you about personal matters, and unless you've made me comfortable to ask. So it's the same thing when we look at language, when we look at presentation, when we look at engagement.
Fantastic. I don't know whether you are moonlighting as what you do in your safety and day job, because you are speaking like a customer experience professional. I don't know whether you do these things in secret somewhere, because every single thing you have said is exactly what we preach in customer experience excellence. It's a marvel that we are not doing it for this category of customers. Do not assume. Have boundaries. Honor the customer. Handle them with courtesy, dignity, and respect. Don't do to them anything that you wouldn't want to be done for yourself. So why are we, and we here I'm saying all inclusively ourselves, why are we so quick to do different for the customer group, persons living with disabilities? You have talked about inclusion. Ask. what would you love to be addressed as? And then we just run with that. It's the same way we ask customers, what would you like? Would you like to be called by this, that, or the other? And we run with it. And so therefore, I think that message is coming on and on. You've talked about ableist. We don't want to be racist or tribalist or misogynist or all of those ists. And so therefore, we shall stop being ableist and be more inclusive. Winnie, can I ask you, with your work, the work that you've been doing with inclusion, what are some of the myths you find? What are some of the things that you find are myths we need to debunk? I know for sure there was an activity, and I was talking to Winnie and I was telling her the non-speaking people. And she's asking me, who are these non-speaking people? And in my mind, I think I'm trying to be very polite and politically correct, or is it language correct, and not say deaf people? And she said, Carol, quit with that. What is non-speaking? They speak. They just speak differently. So that's the label that Bright is talking about. Here I've gone and labeled, and I'm thinking I have all this customer service language because I've been in customer service. Gosh, niliji chuna kabisa, chuna. That's the third time tuning myself. So Winnie, please tell us some of the myths and what we can do to debunk those myths. Over to you.
Thank you so much once again. As you've said, sometimes actually we do this very unknowingly, unconsciously. You say things and you're thinking you are being helpful. Instead, you are making the situation worse at some time. So I think today we'll just use example Bright as specimen Y, because everything we're going to do to her. But now the problem, she's my boss. When we go back to ICS office, I hope I want to be fired. Yeah, so Bright has said lots of very good things. When you come to her and you're really thinking, you're trying to be nice, like, what happened to you? Can I pray for you? So, and her, she's wondering, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to do business with you. I'm here for us to have a meeting or something like that. So I think something else that people always think that persons with disability are very bitter people. Sometimes the experiences we expose them to might make somebody just decide, because they're human beings. They have all these feelings that we experience as well. So when you start treating somebody in a way they feel it's not right, they can as well feel respond to you in a way that you feel, then you just conclude, oh, this person is bitter, so it means everybody with disability is bitter. But that is not really true. I think for me, like the persons I work with very closely, who are people with disability, they are very happy people. They are happy souls that I meet every day. And more often than not, I tell people, I even forget that these my friends are persons with disability until somebody reminds me, like, you are really surrounded by these people with disability. So I'm like, at who? Oh, Bright, not L, not who, and you mention all these names, then it dawns on me. But then when you just treat them normally, as create a normal environment, talk about everything else that you talk about with a friend, with a colleague, then you never see, I think I have never experienced that bitterness unless you provoke it. And something else that people maybe, they're just myths, that people who use a wheelchair are chronically ill or they're sick people. I think this might have been encouraged by the fact that when you go to hospitals, most of the time they use wheelchair for people who are sick, but then that wheelchair is not tied to the sickness of this person. It's on a totally different thing. And I like what Bright mentioned before, that for her, wheelchair is just like a tool of moving from point A to point B. It's like when you ride a bicycle or something, it makes your movement much easier. So it's not like you feel bound, like I am in some kind of a prison. That is not the point. But then when you look at it very positively, you feel like it is something that makes your life just a little easier to move about. Some people also think that deaf people, all the deaf people are able to lip read. So when you meet a deaf person and you start trying to whisper to them or something, that is not true. Even that lip reading, it's a skill that most of them were learning in schools. But then recently, we even realized that the Kenya education system, they dropped off that whole idea of teaching deaf children to lip read and to try to mouth whatever they're saying. And they're strictly being trained to just sign with their mouths closed. So this makes it not possible for all deaf people to lip read. And something else people think is that persons with disability are more comfortable with their own, with people who are having disability like themselves. That is also not true. I think this happened to me not too long ago, where I fellowship in church. At one point, we have a Bible study that we felt it was a little complex, so we needed someone else to come and just have a discussion with the team. So when we made this request to the Bible study desk of that area to get us somebody, they looked for a person with disability, and they were like, yeah, these challengers, they need somebody to help them with the Bible study. So they got us someone else, and they were like, but why? So their reasoning was because they are persons with disability, we have to get them someone else. Well, at this point, I was just feeling like it's just a Bible study. I mean, I just want to know what you understand about this verse, what someone else understands, and it should be as easy as that. So I don't think it's really not true that persons with disability just prefer to all the time interact or stay with their own. Because at the end of the day, when you look at where we are, when you go to workplace, when you go to a hospital, most of these places, it's not specific for persons with disabilities. So they also need to just interact with the society and the community and normally. And something else is that persons with disabilities, life is totally different. That is a myth. It is not true because, as I mentioned before, they experience emotions, they get sad, they get happy, and they go through most of these things. They get employed, they drive cars, they get married, they got children. So they run businesses just like all of us. So it's not like their lives and us, we're totally different. Even the emotions we experience, just the same. And something else, people admit that persons with disability always need help. Like Bright mentioned, there are times that it is not help that she needs. When you look at her and you think maybe someday she'll get help, no. I will tell you, like I mentioned before, today in ICS where I work, the board really help me a lot instead. I don't really know if I help them, but then because they help me to do my work. Bright is the chair of the board, as we mentioned before. And with her leadership, with her guidance, a lot has been happening excellently. And most of the time I consult and they give me this help. So in that case, I just feel like the persons with disability actually offer so much help, but if you give them that opportunity and if you create the right environment. And something else, another myth that people say is that disability and conditions like epilepsy are caused by evil spirits or something. This is also not true because there are so many causes of different disabilities, sicknesses, accidents, and all those things. So it has nothing to do with evil spirits and stuff like that. Something else, people think a myth that people with learning disability or mental disability can be cured, can be caused by could be as a result of a curse. This is also not true because, as I mentioned, there are so many different causes of disability. Another myth, people believe that disability can be cured by witch doctor or something. Most of the people, when I share the experiences with me, they tell me how their parents at an early age helped them to all these people who pray for you or people who can try to reverse whatever has happened to you. More often than not, it just causes so much harm and so much pain to these people, when that is not something that you can cure through witch doctor or something. There's no scientific proof that something like that can happen. And some other people believe that if you touch a person with disability, it could bring you bad luck, or it could even, you could as well get a disability. This is not true. When you hug these people, when you touch them, there's nowhere, disability is not contagious. So it's not like you're going to become disability the next minute. So they're just people like every one of us. And some other people also believe there's a time that we had really issue. People with albinism really suffered when people had some myth that if you use parts of their body part, that concussion, you are able to get rich, you're able to get this wealth. All that is not true. There's no way it is proven. So there's so many myths that we can talk about the whole day. But I think that, and I'm sure even you guys who are seated in this meeting, if we're given a chance, all of you, you've had these ideas in your mind. You're just looking at somebody and you're thinking, maybe this person can't get married. Maybe this person can't run, can't work. Maybe especially when you look at the ones who maybe sit in town and not doing much. Well, there's another very beautiful side of persons with disability, and that is the side and the picture that we want to paint in your minds today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Winnie. You've painted a very beautiful picture. I invite questions on the chat or raise your hand. This is question and answer time. But before that, I want to ask Bright one question and Monica one question, because you have told us just to ask. Monica, I am wondering, do you get tired? Are you getting tired? Please let us know. I think I have this myth in my mind that signing is very tiring. So Monica, you can speak, and Winnie, you can interpret for us what Monica is saying. Monica, are you getting tired?
No, I am fine.
You are fine. Okay, great. When people sign for a long time, do they get tired? Today we are debunking myths. Over to you, Monica. Do they? Do you?
Yes, we do get tired.
All right. Okay, Sawa, we appreciate you today, and we appreciate the wonderful work that you are doing for us in interpretation in this meeting. So Bright, tell me something. I was in school with a wonderful gentleman in the university called Justus Katumo. He too was on a wheelchair, brilliant guy, first class. And what he would complain about is that when people see him, they would start to talk very slowly and doubt his intelligence. And when they're talking to other people, they're talking like this, and then they would now switch to Justice and talk like that. Have you experienced this? And is this something that we do, without thinking? Over to you, Bright.
That's funny because all the time, many times, you're underestimated. People talk to me slowly. People talk as they want to touch my face, like the way you do for a little baby. Hi, and they want to touch your face. I've experienced that many times. Worst of all is when somebody is helping you. Let's say somebody is pushing your wheelchair, and somebody else wants to find out information about you. For example, you've gone for a function. They want to find out what you eat, what you don't eat, so that they can serve. They ask the person that is pushing the wheelchair, and they go something like, "Uyu anakunywa chai? I'm right here." Normally, I would say, "Hi, I'm here." So yes, we are many times underestimated. My personal experience is one time when I was invited as a speaker in an organization. And as I arrived before the person that I knew and I had contact with. And so I introduced myself. The people are set. My name is so-and-so. And the person looks at me and second guesses, look like it can be you. So I sat at the back, and the person was late, so they were getting agitated. So when the person finally arrived, and they said, "Oh, but our guest speaker was here early, before time," and they looked at me, they say, you're already underestimated. The other thing they do is we can be having a conversation. People can be having a conversation. And when they turn to me, they're having the conversation in English. They'll say, "Habari yako." Nothing wrong with Kiswahili, but it's said from a place of, you can't be speaking English. And I always challenge them. And I said, I went to school. I did my master's as an adult just the other day, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. And I was the valedictorian. I was the best student. So, and you could have seen the accolades. It was like I'd conquered the world. It was like, that is also ableist covert. It's not obvious, but you don't expect me to excel. Therefore, when I do, you make a big deal out of it. It's the opposite of underestimating. So both ways are uncomfortable, because if you give me accolades for arriving to work early, or finishing my work, or being the best in class, well, what expectations did you have for me? That I would be the last. Therefore, if I'm first, it's strange. So yes, I do experience that. But as an advocate for disability, I always take the opportunity to educate. One time I was taking a flight to some place, and the pilot came to me because the flight was late and said, "Let everybody get in, then we will load you." I smiled and I said, that makes me luggage because everybody else is going in. So who am I? So luggage follows or what? So I think even in our conversations today, we must remove the barriers of them and us. There's no them and us. It's we. And the question had asked earlier, when I was coughing, I think I lost track of things. What kind of jobs? I think that question can also come out as negative because I am a professional. I'm an intellectual person. I am a head of an organization. So when you say what kind of jobs, what do you mean? Do you expect me to be a cobbler, tailor, what, which is not bad, but what is your expectation? What causes you to ask those kinds of questions? There's no us and them, there's only we. And the moment we remove that dichotomy, we stop then planning for quote, quote, normal people. Why is a door 6'8"? What if a door was 3 feet and all of us had to bend over? Who is more abled then? I would definitely glide through a 3 feet high door because I'd be sitting on a wheelchair. You'll be standing and maybe you're 5 feet, 6 feet. Therefore, will I call you disabled? Therefore, it is very important to be conscious about our environment and the language we use. There's no us and them. There's just we. And let's celebrate diversity. Let's not try to fix diversity. Diversity is beautiful. We just do things differently. If you want to call me paraplegic, kiwete, whatever, then can I also call you diabetic and cancerous and everything when you walk through the door? So that's just what it's about. It's a mind shift, a paradigm shift that we look at people as people, person with disability. I'm a person first. Then the disability is the situation or the condition I find myself in.
I think our take home for today is that somebody has said on the chat, we need to repent. I think, Yani, awareness is the first thing. Even just this conversation is bringing to light just how much we need to unlearn, just what the knowledge gap is that exists, and how we need to bridge that knowledge gap so that we don't consciously or unconsciously do things that are not inclusion aligned, that are not embracing, and then cause, unnecessary strife, unnecessary discomfort, unnecessary pain. And in the customer experience field, we are very big on things that we say and we are actually not doing. And so therefore, this is a wake-up call, such a wake-up call, an absolute wake-up call, that it can be covert or it can be overt, it can be too much or it can be under. And so all of these things are things that we need to be aware of. We'd ask for questions, but we have so many comments coming in. I think it's just people are talking about assumptions and we should never make assumptions. There's the whole discussion on the chat about, not underestimating and not making judgment and not being stereotypical. I think we are highly stereotypical. The word of the day is that there is no them and us, it is we. That's the highlight. There's the Kenyan proverb there, we. And Winnie is also contributing and saying, let's not say disabled people, but persons with. It's the same way I can be a person with diabetes. I am not a diabetic. And so these labels and these items that we keep saying with the words of our mouth are things that we need to be very clear and very conscious of. I know that time is running very fast and we wanted to talk a little bit about what kind of audits can we do for the internal and the external customer to see that we are more aligned, more inclusive, more able to just to have customer inclusion as our strategies, as our in policy, how we can have a very intentional and purposeful and deliberate walk towards getting this inclusion, diversity and inclusion agenda done. So we have like 8 minutes to go. So I don't know whether we can get into that conversation or we can arrange a different one, or we can get in touch with ICX about the auditing, because we would possibly not be able to audit for ourselves. When we are auditing customer journeys and we are walking through the customer's journey, we need to do it with the customer, because we can sit here in the boardroom and say, oh, the customer needs this and the customer needs this. But when the customer themselves come and they walk through the journey, they're able to say better. So I don't know what we can do around audits. Winnie, Is there anything that we can do around auditing our brands, our communication, our etiquette, our physical spaces, our non-physical spaces? Winnie?
Thank you very much. I think, as you've mentioned, we clearly can't handle everything in an hour's meeting, but since we've started this conversation, we need to just keep it going. And now at the organization level, we could work together to help you just to audit, just to find where you are in this whole journey of inclusion, where you're doing well, where you need to improve on. So that is something that might need to be a little more details. Then we can give you like kind of a guideline that you just counter check with what you're already doing and what you're not doing. So I feel this is a conversation that we might move to a different maybe forum, but it's a really, really good idea. We appreciate it, and as ICS, we'll be more than willing to help and work on this together.
All right, thank you very much. I can see Nyambura in the chat, just like Bright, you asked us this morning to ask. I can see Nyambura in the chat saying that she prefers disabled and she's okay with that. And so therefore, we shouldn't make blanket assumptions. We should just ask. We should not just decide things the same way we want to be asked, the same way customers want to be asked. So as we wrap up this beautiful conversation with a nice bow, I can see a question coming in before I call it off. Tauhida is asking, very, very interesting conversations. I just wanted to ask Bright about her experience at the airport and what she thinks we can improve on. Bright, there's a question for you there. Tauhida is I know people. Tauhida works for Kenya Airports Authority. She's very passionate about customer experience. When you need help at the airport, dear people, you need to know people. You need to call Tauhida and she will sort you out. All of you frequent flyers here. So Bright, maybe you can answer that before we wrap this up.
Yes, the one thing is the provision of ramps. If you don't have a ramp to the plane, and I know that sometimes in the smaller airports it's not always possible, the decent thing to do is to allow the person with disability, especially if it's a wheelchair user, to go in first and to come out last. That's usually done, but sometimes you find that, like in the situation I have narrated, when you go in last, it means that your wheelchair can go through the aisles, so you need the smaller wheelchair. And sometimes if it's a smaller plane, you have to be carried, and you're carried when people are already seated. So you're going over people's heads and you're being lifted up, and maybe your shirt is not properly tucked in. Decency is not just for the able-bodied is so as you call yourself, of the temporary abled. I'll give you another label there now that you label us, but it's for everyone. My decency is crucial. I always insist I go in first and I come out last. So I one day when somebody said, but we can carry you, the lift is not working, I said, okay, let's start by carrying you first in. How do you feel when you're carried in? So that is the kind of attitude we just need to have. Sometimes we don't have all the facilities that we need, and we do appreciate that. But when we don't, then accord us the decency in terms of getting in first, for example, and getting out last, so that I maintain my decency. Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. We are doubling back to what we preach in customer experience excellence about not negotiating on CDR. It's called the CDR principle. We must absolutely treat our customers with courtesy, dignity, and respect. It doesn't matter the situation. Whether it is even a customer conflict situation, courtesy, dignity, and respect can never be compromised. I can see we have a few minutes to go. I want to ask for parting shot. I think we must have another session. Clearly we must. We haven't had enough time to exhaust all of this. There's so much more that we need to do. Let me ask you for your parting shot, Winnie, and then your parting shot, Bright, and then your parting shot, Monica, and then we shall be good to go. So what last words do you want to tell us, Winnie?
For my parting shot, it's the story, a very normal, common story, and it's going to be brief, of this old man who used to go to the beach to just have a walk and write, journal his thoughts. So one day as he was walking along the beach and journaling everything else that comes to him, he saw a young boy from afar. And this boy kept bending down and standing up, walking, bending down and standing up. When he got closer to each other, he realized he was actually picking something and throwing into the water. And then when they eventually met, he asked this young man, what exactly are you trying to do? And this boy responded like, the huge storm that just happened it just swept out lots of starfish onto the shores of the beach. And definitely, because they're out of the water, if they continue staying here and the sun shines on them, they're going to all die. So what I'm doing, I'm picking them and throwing them back into the water. And this old man looked at this young man and like clearly, what are you trying to do? These things are over thousands, tens of thousands. How much difference can you make when you pick them and throw them back? And this boy paused for a moment and told him, I understand, but then that one that I picked and threw back into the water, I have made a difference in its life. This is the same case with the issue of inclusion of persons with disability. You might think it's could be overwhelming, all these things that you are saying, it's so much, but then that's small impact that you take, that one ramp that you build, that one toilet that you made inclusive, that one person that you employed with disability, you've made a difference in their life. It doesn't matter the tens of thousands who still need you to reach out to. So that is my parting shot. Don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel like it's complicated. It's a very simple agenda that if we work together, we can make an impact one life at a time. Thank you.
Making an impact one life at a time. It's at this point I feel like saying amen. And so I shall just say amen. Just one life at a time, one person at a time, one intervention at a time. Thank you, Winnie. Over to you, Bright, your parting shots.
First of all, thank you very much, and I'm honored to have been part of this discussion. I will just say that let us embrace diversity, focus on three things: check your attitude, check your words, and check your actions. It's not very complicated. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Check your attitude, check your actions, and check your words. So, dear ones, this is what self-audit. Before we come even to the disability audits we want to do for our organizations in terms of communication, language, whatever, let us audit ourselves. Let's check our attitude, let's check our words, and let's check our actions. Parting shot for you, Monica. What do you want to tell us this morning? Or is it afternoon? Oh, it's afternoon, it's lunchtime. Yes, over to you, Monica.
Great discussion. I have really learned a lot. Yes, so thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Good people, we have come to the tail end of this fantastic conversation. We want to thank the team from ICS, Winnie, Bright, and Monica. You have inspired us this morning to do something, and we promise you that your conversations here have not been in vain. We are going to do something right now. And because we have the power to start with ourselves, we shall start with ourselves. Sometimes we'll say, I don't have budget, I'm not able to do this, but we can change ourselves immediately. Look at our attitudes, our thoughts, our words, and make a difference for just one person. And so we are walking away with that. Most definitely, we will ask you to come back again because we have not even scratched the surface. How do we find ICS? How do we find ICS? I think we have the contact somewhere. Let me look for them. I think if you have what's on screen, this is where you can find ICS. Each and every one of us, let us look for them so that we can have these conversations at work. We talk about employee experience, we talk about customer experience. Let's make sure it's the real experience that we want. On behalf of ICX, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming and for spending your time here today and for asking questions and for making great comments. Let us keep the conversation moving in every space, even if alone, having this conversation alone is a big thing. There's a feedback form on the chat. Please use it. Please give ICX feedback about this forum and any other forums that you may wish. Bye, everybody.